Thank you. Hello, everyone. It is very nice to be here. I have been walking around, as I see many of you have as well, looking at all the displays. And they have filled me with happiness. So everyone that is presenting here today, thank you very much. I almost don't want to talk. I'd rather us just spend our time looking at all the displays, but I would probably get in trouble if I did that. So the title of this talk is "It Takes a Village to Raise a Child." Who has heard of this quote before? Has anyone heard of this quote before? It is a famous saying in Africa. There are many sources of the quote from different areas of Africa with different variants. But what the phrase means is, bringing up a child is something that needs everyone. Not just one parent, not just two parents, not just the parents and the brothers and sisters, not just the grandparents and the parents and the children, but the whole community essentially brings up each child. So I think if you think back on your own childhood, you will realize the truth of this. In my own childhood, my parents and my grandparents were a great influence in my life, but so were my teachers, my neighbors, the kind bus driver who drove me to school, the mean bus driver who drove me to school. As we become adults and people from being children, we are changed by the community we are in and by everyone around us. And I want to talk today about what we need to learn from this for education. Because as you can imagine, if your education has been anything like mine, most modern education, we imagine that it's one teacher looking after 20, 16, 60 children. Or it's one parent or two parents bringing up the child. But actually, that's not how humans learn. It's not how we've learnt in the past, and I hope it's not how we're going to learn in the future. So, without any further ado, Z is it's Z, isn't it? Zai. Fa. Sorry. I have a good friend Z, so Fa is going to slowly scroll up a little bit. Using the power of virtual reality, I'll use my hand to scroll up a little bit. Woohoo! This is me. I'm Richard Buckland. I'm the director of what's called the Director of First Year Experience at the University of New South Wales. The first year experience is the experience that our students have as freshmen when they arrive at the university. We have somewhere between 15 and 20,000 students arriving every year at the university. We have nearly 60,000 students at the university. We're a very large university, and with the university for the rest of their education. And so my role is to find out what their experience is and then work out any problems with it and then work out how we need to change it and fix it. And I will spend the second half of the talk today telling you what we've learned and discovered about what it's like to be a student and telling you what we're doing to try and change that. But first of all, I'd just like to talk about some ideas, because this conference is humanizing technology. What an incredible conference title. In fact, I keep writing things down today. Is it the motto of this university that a garden of virtue and wisdom, have I got it right? That I heard the rector say before? What an incredible vision for your university, to be a garden of virtue and knowledge. Yes, that's exactly what a university is. I'm ashamed I've never thought of it before. And then at the end of your song, and again, I think it was a university song. There's some line, something like, together, let's make the world a better place. And in Australia, back at home, if we said that, people would roll their eyes and think, oh, Richard's making, or whoever's saying it is making these grand claims that they don't believe in, it just sounds good. But I could see, as you were singing the song and I looked around, that you believed in this and you aspired to make the world a better place. And of course, that's what a university should be doing. So if we could just scroll up a little bit, I want to show you a picture of shoes. This idea of humanizing technology is important. Why is it important to humanize technology? And the answer is these shoes. And if we scroll up a little bit more, these shoes versus these people. Because people aren't shoes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we produce shoes, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we produce students. And you're going to see that we can learn a little bit from how we produce shoes, but if we do nothing more than learn about how we produce shoes to produce students, we're going to produce students who are shoes, and that's not what we want. Can we scroll up a little bit more? Thanks, Far. All right, I've got an exercise for you all. Can everyone spend 30 seconds and think, in all of your learning up until now, what was your best class or teacher? Just think about it, and now I want you to spend 30 seconds telling the person next to you, or if there's three of you sitting in three, can you just quickly exchange with each other, so 15 seconds each, your best class or teacher in your whole life up until now. Go, quick. You need to talk to each other now. Everyone needs to, I'm going to be handing out late notes to anyone who doesn't do, you two, you're not talking. You need to talk. Who was your best teacher or class? Who was your best teacher or class ever? Your favorite teacher or class? Your best, every teacher has been your best teacher. Do you have a specific teacher then? Who was your best teacher? What was their name? Mrs. Gunn. And what was so good about Mrs. Gunn? Thank you. What's your name? Tan. Tan said her best teacher was her maths teacher, Mrs. Gunn. And I said, what was so good about Mrs. Gunn? And she said, she cared about us. She taught us very nicely. I have asked this question to thousands of students, and as part of my role of looking after the first year experience, I've interviewed vast numbers of students coming into my university asking them the same question. Can we just scroll up a little bit and look at the table? I get the same answer from everyone. Can you guess which column describes people's best teacher or class? This teacher inspired me. They gave me confidence to persevere. They made me love the subject. They helped me when things got tough. They helped me realize my talent. They made me want to learn. They believed in me. Is that one category? That's one category of answers. Do you think that was the most popular category, or was it this category of answer? My best teacher complied with official course learning outcomes. My best teacher was organized. My best teacher clearly explained assessment requirements. My best teacher marked work promptly. They maintained class discipline and order. They had appropriate qualifications. They explained things well. Of the over 1,000 people I've asked to describe their best learning experiences, most of them fell in one of these two sets of answers. Can you guess which one? Which one do you think? The first one, yes. The first one describes how the teacher changed or helped the student. The impact they had on the student as a human. The second one described certain processes that teachers follow in order to be good teachers. But I think it's really important to notice that the second column is not important in itself. It's just a series of ways we go about trying to achieve the first column. And the first column is what counts. And I think probably the biggest danger in education, especially as we move to MOOCs and using technology to give us scale, is we concentrate on the second column and we forget the whole reason that we follow the things in the second column, which is to produce the first column. So if we scroll up a little bit more, I waited till you moved away far, until you were far away, and then every time you do, I'm going to ask you to scroll up. That's right. All right. Oh, don't go up anymore. Sorry, down. One more piece of data I did. At my university, does everyone know about Net Promoter Scores? A Net Promoter Score is you ask someone if they would recommend someone else or a service. And you ask them to say how likely on a scale of 1 to 10 it is they would recommend that service. I asked many of the students doing first year subjects at the university to say how likely it would be that they would recommend their tutor, not their lecturer, their tutor, to another student. The idea with Net Promoter Score is a bit different to a normal teaching evaluation. You're asking if someone would recommend something to someone else. Essentially, you're not asking to praise or criticize someone. You're saying, would I recommend this person to a third party? And because we now have to look after the third party, we're less inclined just to praise the person. We're more inclined to give an honest answer, or so the theory goes. And I gathered all the responses from students who had said 9 or 10 out of 10 as being extremely likely to recommend their tutor to another person. And then I asked all of those students, well, I asked all the students, but I just looked at the 9s and 10s, what reason lies behind this high score you've given to your teacher in terms of being an effective teacher, someone you'd recommend to someone else who was trying to learn the subject? And I made a wordle of their responses. So here are all the responses. If we could scroll up, the important words in all the responses. Can you guess the biggest one? Oh, you can see it now. I've highlighted in yellow, there you probably can't see it very well, all the words which I think sort of fall in the second column. All the things you'd expect. Things like the mechanics of teaching, being organised, all the things actually we normally ask in student evaluations, they're virtually not important at all. It's very clear to students that to make a difference to their learning, we need to treat them as humans and deal with their emotions and deal with them as complex social beings. They are not tape recorders that we have to explain things clearly to so they can remember them. Friendly, helpful, nice, help, understanding, patient, helped, easy, passionate, engaging, willing, fun, like. These are the main things. And then the second tier stuff, explaining, learning, teaching, knowledge, taught, clear, concepts, knowledgeable, explanations, questions, content, explains, explain. These are much less important. So is it a clear sort of, I know I'm labouring the point, but does it sort of make sense to everyone? Look at you. You guys are waving at each other. No, that's so nice. We are learning machines, but we're not robots plugged in. We see people we like and we smile and wave, and that makes you happy, and look at you now, you're all happy. It turns out that when our emotions are aroused, when we're happy, when we're relaxed, when we're not stressed, this is when we learn, this is when we remember, and most importantly, this is when we change. So if we want people to just memorize and recall, you can do that anywhere under any set of circumstances. But if you want people to be different people as a result of education, to change their values or their ideas, their beliefs, or anything like that, then we need to engage with the affective dimension of learning. Okay, if we just scroll up a little bit more. So, thank you. We must remember the end. So we need to know that all of those things that are in the second column are a means to an end. There's nothing wrong with being good at explaining. There's nothing wrong with being organised or on time or meeting the course learning outcomes, but they're a means to an end. And the important thing is the end, and we can't lose sight of the end. And the end is, for me, as a teacher who teaches engineers, and so I teach cybersecurity, so I teach hackers, I want people to graduate thinking like an engineer. I want them to see a problem and analyze it like an engineer does. I'm happy if they can memorize a whole lot of stuff and they need to know about structures of metals and materials and various programming languages and all sorts of facts they have to know, sure. But they could know all those facts and be useless to me and to the world and to their employer if when I turn them out they don't think like an engineer. We saw that bridge collapse in Italy. An engineer does not build a bridge that collapses. When we have bridges that collapse, that's a failure of engineering. That's a series of people not thinking like engineers to allow that to happen. I want to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Who knows Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Has anyone heard of this? It's an old concept from the 70s. Oh, perfect, thank you. Let me give you the world's quickest. Maslow was a seminal psychologist, I guess you'd call him. His ideas have been refined and adjusted since the 70s, so this is a very simplified version, like Bloom's taxonomy is a simplified version of what it's like now. But this is enough to convey the idea. Maslow's hierarchy of needs essentially describes how humans are motivated to meet their needs. And we have a whole heap of needs. And his observation was we prioritize the needs based on a scale he's got here. So our most basic needs down the bottom are physiological needs. So we need air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and we need to be able to reproduce. As a species, these are essential needs. Actually, not just humans, all animals need these. These are the most basic needs. And if these are not met, then we focus on these needs almost exclusively until they are met. One classic example, the person that explained Maslow's hierarchy of needs to me years ago gave me this incredible analogy. Apparently the US Navy was preparing for some war or other. I'm not sure if it was the Second World War, it was so long ago, I'm sorry, I'm not very good with the analogy. And they sent a battleship out and they wanted to see how people would survive on low rations. So they sent a battleship out, but they put all the crew on low rations. And they wanted to see how long they could do that and how it impaired their effective functioning. So for more than a month, people didn't get enough to eat on the boat. Now here's the interesting thing. There was a psychologist on the boat that recorded this. When the boat set out, the sailors, men, had pinned up on their walls pictures of Marilyn Monroe and women in bathing costumes and things like that. It was a very male sort of a ship. And after 1 week of not having enough food, all of those pictures came down and people stuck up pictures of food. It turns out you don't worry so much about dating and romance and love and physical needs like that when you haven't got enough food. Food trumps. It's more basic in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you're hungry, but suddenly you've got a paper bag over your head and you can't breathe properly, you forget about the hunger because the lack of air becomes the most important thing. And if you're hungry and thirsty, you don't care about the hunger because the thirst is more basic. So moving up, we have the physiological needs at the bottom. Then we have safety needs, personal safety, employment, resources, health, property. We don't tend to worry about those too much until we've met our basic needs at the bottom. Once we've met our basic needs at the bottom, we start thinking about these needs. Once we've met these basic sort of survival comfort needs, then we start to care about love and belonging, about community and connectedness. When that is sorted out, then we start to worry about esteem, what other people think of us and what we think of ourselves, the esteem other people hold of us and our own esteem in our own eyes. And if we're comfortable with all those things, Maslow invented this phrase, or talked about this phrase, self-actualization. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it essentially means trying to be the best person you can. It means trying to not be influenced by others, trying to be virtuous, trying to embrace experience, trying to be reflectful, trying to do things that you would be proud about if you look back on them 10 years later and you wouldn't mind if they were written on your, that sort of thing. Self-actualization, the desire to be the most that one can be. But it's very hard to try and do that if you're hungry. Because it's not impossible, and we do know people satisfy needs at multiple levels simultaneously. Humans aren't simple creatures, but it's hard to focus on one level when the level below has serious problems. Can we just scroll up a little bit more? I just wanted to show you a categorization of these needs. A little bit more, just show that pyramid down below if you can. The bottom 4 needs are known as deficiency needs. So you get anxious if you don't have them. And your motivation decreases as the needs are met. So if you don't have physiological well-being, if you can't breathe or drink or eat, you're unhappy. But as you get more and more food, your motivation to get food decreases. As you have more and more air, then you don't worry about air anymore and you don't want it. So you can meet these things. You only are motivated when there's not enough of them. The interesting thing is the very top one is your motivation increases as your needs are met. As you focus more and more on changing yourself in some way, it becomes more and more motivating to you. Right, thank you. And can we scroll up a little bit more? Thank you, you're doing this very well, Far. Excellent. Here are just some standard characteristics of self-actualizers. I'll just read them super fast because the writing's small and you might not be able to see it. Self-actualizers tend to perceive reality efficiently and they can tolerate uncertainty. They accept themselves and others for what they are. They're spontaneous in thought and action. They're problem-centered, not self-centered. They have an unusual sense of humor. They're able to look at life objectively. They're highly creative. They're resistant to enculturation. That means they don't believe what everyone else around them believes unquestioningly. They're not purposefully unconventional. They're not unconventional just for the sake of being unconventional. They're concerned for the welfare of humanity. They're capable of deep appreciation of basic life experiences. They establish deep, satisfying interpersonal relationships with a few people. They have peak experiences. They have a need for privacy. They have democratic attitudes, and they have strong moral and ethical standards. And scroll up to the next list. The sorts of behaviours that lead to this self-actualization at the top is experiencing life like a child with full absorption and concentration, trying new things instead of sticking to safe paths, listening to your own feelings and evaluating experiences rather than the voice of tradition, authority or the majority, avoiding pretense, game playing and being honest, being prepared to be unpopular if your views don't coincide with those of the majority, taking responsibility and working hard, trying to identify your internal defences and having the courage to give them up. I'm just quoting from a website there, there's a link at the bottom. So I think as teachers, we probably all recognise this is what we want our students to be. When they leave university, I want them to have a self-actualised life. I don't want them to be unhappy and not fulfilled in their life, even if they earn enough money. I want them to earn enough, so I want Maslow's needs to be satisfied down the bottom, but that's not enough living at the bottom. You need it, I'm not poo-pooing it. If people are poor, we need to look after them. But once they reach a certain level of wealth, then perhaps we shouldn't entirely be focusing on wealth, we should be moving up and increasing our ambitions for our students. All right, now, I'll draw all this together in a sec. Can we scroll up a little bit more far? I have here a picture of some tools from the Stone Age. Here are stone axes. On the left is a typical early Stone Age axe. We found them from about 1.2 million years old up till about 500,000 years old. For more than 500,000 years, humans didn't seem to innovate or change. There was just this one tool that we had, and they're everywhere. And then, about 500,000 years ago, or a bit later, suddenly with an explosion, we started to innovate, and we see axes and tools like the ones on the right, containing obsidian, say for example, which required trade and interaction with people from far locations, tools to achieve different purposes. There's this explosion of tools from then on, and we haven't looked back. So why did we not change for more than 500,000 years and then start to change? So there's lots of theories about this. Evolutionary psychologists have various theories. I believe the currently accepted theory, and I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, is humans have big brains. We need big brains in order to interact with others. Our brain size, as for all primates, is correlated closely with the size of our social groups. Primates that have, or hominins that have bigger social groups have bigger brains. Hominins with smaller social groups have smaller brains. Humans have brains, the largest of all the hominins, that allowed us to have large groups of people interacting and talking together and not just trying to kill each other, as say, for example, would happen if you had, I don't know, what's an animal with a small brain? My dog. I have a dog with a very small brain. You have, actually, that's not a good example. Dogs work quite well in packs up to a certain size. But beyond a certain size, the pack breaks down and they attack each other. Someone once told me that of all the great apes, only humans can get on a plane packed full of a couple of hundred people, and when the plane lands at the other end and we get off, it's not full of blood and body parts. We're actually all polite and just get off together. We can jam up next to each other, people we don't even know in a lift, and we can deal with that. Other primates in a lift would just go nuts. We have this complex brain because it enables us to suppress our normal self-defensive attitudes and see things from the point of view of others and analyze situations and work out when it's a social threat and not. So we have these great big brains that let us be social. But the problem with the great big brain is it takes an enormous amount of energy. It consumes more than a quarter of our daily calorie needs. It's spent just fueling the brain. And it turned out for 1 million years or so that creatures live in a delicate balance. They have to take energy in and then they have to do things with the energy. And with the amount of food we had available and the amount of shelter we had and the amount of walking we had to do to get food, we spent all of our time essentially just feeding our brain. But once we started to innovate, once we started to trade and collaborate with others, once we mastered fire as a way of doing cooking and making food more available and clearing forests and so on, once we started to do that, suddenly we freed up time, we met our basic time needs, and we're able to do all sorts of things. We started to innovate initially with other sorts of stone axes, but now with iPhones and cars and all the other things we've innovated. We haven't stopped. So if we could just scroll up a little bit more. Oh, here's the timeline. We can probably skip the timeline, don't worry about that. The important thing to notice is this period from 1.7 to 320 million years ago, 320,000 years ago, where you can see a break in the line, where essentially nothing happened. There's no difference in the fossil record between the tools that people produce that we can find, and then it went nuts after that. But if we just scroll up a little bit more, I want to talk about why are we talking about Maslow? So for teaching, Maslow's hierarchy of needs has pretty clear consequences. Our students have to be safe in the classroom, they have to feel relaxed, they have to feel welcomed in the classroom in order to turn off their flight-fight response and start to pay attention and learn. We want them to be thinking up high, and if their basic things down the bottom aren't being met, it's a distractor. So, and that's well known and well understood, and I'm sure you're all across all that already. I don't really want, though one interesting consequence of Maslow's hierarchy of needs for students in our teaching is that students have to feel esteem. It's actually really important, and it's a barrier when they don't feel esteem. So praising them, supporting them, making them feel valued and safe in the room, making them feel accepted by the group is actually a barrier if we don't do it. Once we do it, everything's fine and we can go on to do teaching, but it will be a block if the students feel inadequate, unaccepted, bullied, picked on, or not part of the group. Actually, that will block learning. But I don't want to talk about Maslow for teaching. I want to actually generalize and talk about Maslow for education. What does Maslow's hierarchy of needs tell us about education systems and ways education is organized in countries? Here are 3 pictures of tomatoes. Oh, actually, just stop at the 2. That's fine. Thank you. Go slightly down. I want to see that list of 4 things. So here's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Richard's hierarchy of needs for education. I just made it up. You can use it. It's fine. It's yours. Survival. We need to survive. Everyone needs to survive. So we need education, enough education to survive, if we think about education. So if we go back a long period of time, when perhaps we just lived in small little tribal groups or even smaller, you needed enough to know what food was poisonous and wasn't, what animals were dangerous and what weren't, when you should plant and harvest and sow and reap. You needed to know what situations to avoid. You needed to know who was your friend that you could trust to go hunting with you, and you needed to know who was an enemy that you couldn't turn your back on. We just need to know certain basic things to survive, and parents and the society or family or group you're in will teach you that. That's absolutely needed. We can't have education that doesn't satisfy that. And that was done well enough by people just informally teaching each other. And we do that ourselves now with our children. So anyone that has children, you're explaining to them how to survive for the first 4 or 5 years until they go to school. You're telling them the important things they need to know. You're teaching them about safety. You're teaching them just what they need to do to be a child that's going to live past age 5 and be able to function in society. But once we've done that, what do we need education for? Well, we certainly need it to sustain society. So if society means we need to have people who can hunt, and we need to have people who can grow things, and we need to have a leader who can organise us, and we need to do this, and all the things that's moving it now from the personal to the collective. We need enough education that as a society can survive. And that's obviously essential, and if a society doesn't have that, then that's where we should be putting all our efforts and focus. If you look at how education has changed around the world in the last 200 years, we started with no formal education, but the problem with no formal education is if I want a pair of shoes, I have to go to the person in my village who can make a pair of shoes, or I have to make them myself. And the chance of every village having an expert in shoes and an expert in tool making and an expert in ironwork and an expert in seeds and an expert in is really quite difficult. So as we get more and more complex societies and cultures, we need to know more and more things in order to operate. So to move out of a primitive society into a more civilized society, there are certain things we just have to know. And as a parent, if we go back to the time budget idea, it takes a lot of time to bring up a child. Those first 5 years, I've got 3 girls, it killed me, it really did. I can't believe I managed to do it. We were sleep deprived, it was constantly, some of you have family, who has a family bigger than 3 children? How many? 5. I don't even know how you have 5 children. So how are you even awake? I don't know how you can do that. So I think if we have a larger families, we get too exhausted. There's no way any one parent can teach metallurgy, medicine, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So for a society to move out of primitive, we need to be able to educate at scale. We need to be able to educate at scale because there's just not enough time for individual parents to teach individual children everything. So we need to work out some mass production way of doing it. And obviously every society needs that. Here are the beautiful tomatoes you get when you grow your own tomatoes. Aren't they yummy? Underneath that are the tomatoes you get at a supermarket. Now you probably, in fact I know, you have nicer tomatoes in Malaysia. In Australia, the tomatoes at supermarkets are horrible. But they're made so they can be transported long distances without getting bruised. And they don't have much flavour, but they don't go bad very quickly. And they're really tough, but that means they don't get damaged in transport. And they don't really ever go red and have all the nutrients and vitamins in them, but it's good enough. So in order to allow the whole country to get tomatoes, where very few people live near an area where you can grow tomatoes, we grow average, uniform, standard size, bulk, mass-produced industrial tomatoes that aren't very good. They're not as good as growing my own tomatoes, but I can't grow my own tomatoes and make my own shoes and teach my children medicine and do metallurgy. I just have to do some things. So if we just scroll down again, up again, sorry, the other way, the other way, the other way, the other way, the other, what's the way down. Sorry, I went blank on words. Yeah, just back to that list, because I only did the first 2. Thank you. But once we've got an education system that sustains society, and I reckon you've got it in Malaysia, we've got it in Australia, we've all got that education system now. We can bulk mass educate people enough to sustain society, to produce the various different roles we need, to teach the values and things we need to sustain the society we've got. Once we've met that need, and this is, I guess, the crux of the whole talk, I think we need to move up. I think if we just stayed meeting that need, we'd miss out on the more important things above it. So I think education, the next level, is advancing yourself, advancing your happiness, advancing your life satisfaction, advancing your abilities. So you're not a horrible average tomato turned out by a horrible average tomato industrial system. You're an excellent, delicious tomato. And the last level is, then I think we need to advance society. We need our students, when they graduate, not only to be able to make society function, not only when they graduate should they have great lives and feel fulfilled and use their talents to the greatest, but when our students graduate, they should make society better. As you said in that song, together, we should make the world a better place. That's the top level. So I think we're dealing with the bottom two just fine. And I think the danger now is, as we move up, how are we going to move up? How are we going to change education? Technology allows us the scale problem. It lets us meet the time budget. One teacher can teach a class of 16, one teacher can teach a class of 60. Some of my classes have 10 or 20,000 people in them. I'm sure you guys with MOOCs have classes with maybe hundreds of thousands of people. Hey, I've forgotten your name. Zed. Hey. Hi. It's lovely to see you. So technology lets us solve the time budget, but it doesn't necessarily solve the quality budget. So for me, the danger, the fork in the road where we are now, is we've discovered we can use technology to change the way we educate as a society. All societies have discovered it. You've discovered it in Malaysia very early, but everywhere's discovered it to some extent now. But how are we going to use that technology? Now we can innovate. We're now at the point where now we can make millions of tools. We don't just have one sort of ACS, one sort of classroom, one sort of teacher, one way of lecturing, one way of having a uni. We can do anything. How are we going to innovate now? I think my fear is, and I've seen this happen in many countries, people use these new tools now to teach the same old bad tomato way we always taught that worked on average and was meeting the needs of society on average, to teach it cheaper and at larger volumes. And actually using technology to do that is worse than even when we did it in the classroom industrially, because people don't even have face-to-face. The humanity leaks out when we're online. I can have a horrible impersonal lecture of 600 people happening, but at least we're all in a room together and the students can look at each other and smile and chat and wave like you did across there, and they can make eye contact with me and I can see when they're bored by their facial and body language, and there's some connection between me and them. I can make eye contact. When I'm online, that's even worse. I don't even necessarily get that if I don't have a platform that allows commenting and so on and so on. So what I would like to say is, I think the challenge is how can we make education what it should be? And for me, what it should be is to help people become the best they can and to help society be the best it can. Technology will help us because it solves the time budget, but we have to use the extra time and resources that buys us to do good. Not just keep doing the same old, we need to change. And it's very hard to change. We all teach the way we were taught. We all have the expectations the way we were taught. Our politicians were taught on the old system. They're used to that. Our vice chancellors, our cleaners, our students, our television shows, our movies, everything is based on the old way. To actually change and do something new is a bit difficult. So if we could just scroll up now super fast. Thank you. So, the 3 stages of education, I reckon, you're taught informally at a local family or community. That's education 1.0, say. Oh, no, actually, people are going to reuse those words later on today. So that's the first stage of teaching. The second stage of teaching is where you teach at an industrial level. Rather than having beautiful handmade shoes, you turn out your shoes in a factory on a production line. You don't make beautiful shoes. Everyone's shoes are the same, but they're good enough and society has enough shoes. They're not fantastic shoes, but it works. But of course, people aren't shoes. So it's not good enough to just turn out a whole lot of average looking people. People we want to be delicious tomatoes. We want everyone to be different. So this post-industrial way of teaching, we want people to reach their potential. So scrolling up again. Woo. This is so weird. All right, I just have a little song that I'd like to play a fragment of. I'll come and do it from over here. Does anyone know this song? Shh, 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 shh. Can someone, everyone, if you're near someone that's talking, can you just ask them to be quiet? In fact, let's all say shush together. 1, 2, 3. Shh. Okay. Moderate success. So here's a song. Hope you can hear it. Hang on, here's one I prepared earlier. We might not get it, so I'm going to sing it for you. You're so lucky. My child arrived just the other day. Oh, would you mind pausing it? Whoop, whoop. Pause, pause. My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were bills to pay and... I have the world's worst memory. My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. Can you... My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were bills to pay and... I have the world's worst memory. My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. Can you hit pause? Sorry, we can't hear it. It's a very beautiful song. No, it's actually supposed to be going... My voice is better. Ah, thank you. I'll do that. Hey. Okay, that's okay. And let's just skip over it. Skipping on. Well, he came home from college just the other day, so much like a man that I just had to say, "Son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while?" He shook his head and he said with a smile, "What I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please?" I've long since retired. My son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, "I'd like to see you, if you don't mind." He said, "I'd love to, Dad, if I can find the time." You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. So, this is a very... If we don't show them that education can be more than just memorizing a whole lot of facts, it involves changing the people we are, building bridges, thinking like engineers, working together. If we don't show them that, what are their role models? We'll just produce people just like... A system that's hard like that will produce people that are just like that hard system. We need to, I think, as an imperative, now we have the chance to do it with technology. We need to remember the human dimension of life, the top level of those needs, and we need to teach to achieve those needs. And then we will produce a generation that echo it and go on themselves. So if we could just if you could click on the tab at the top to the other side. I just want to finish off the talk. That's right. And if you could just scroll down a bit, just with this list here. I wanted to tell you what I found in my new job, which I've now had for more than a year, which I love more than anything, which is looking at the experience of our students when they come to university and seeing what it's like and seeing how we can change it and what we need to do to change it. So let me go through this list in lightning time. First of all, I really like that we care about the experience of students. It was new for my uni to do it. I've noticed now there are many positions like this springing up around the place. It's the latest fad. If you want to be on the latest fad, it was MOOCs, it's now student experience. But students' experience and MOOCs go beautifully well together. Here's what it is. In the past, we cared about the processes we did to students. We viewed them from the outside. What are the things we do to them? And we gathered data as though they were cattle or crops we were growing. And if I try teaching this way, I get 20% more yield on my tomatoes. And if we treated them like they were just nothing, like they were inputs to an industrial process. And caring about the student experience is saying, actually, what's education like from their point of view, from the inside? What are they going through? So I've spent a year, well more than a year, I spent a year finding out what it was like for them, and now we're spending a year trying to change it. Here's what I found. First of all, I find this at all universities, not just my own. I find it with graduates. I suspect I'd find it even in Malaysia, though maybe not, because you guys are pretty good and caring and nice, and I like it very much. But nearly every student I spoke to was doing 4 subjects in a semester, and on average, they liked one of them. 1 or 2 of them were okay, and 2 or 1 of them were terrible. That is the experience across the world, across my uni, across all faculties and subjects, that basically we're doing a good job from the student's point of view in 1 out of 4 of our subjects. Which is why, who was it, that girl, has she gone? Was it? She's gone. The girl that had nothing but good teachers, I really wish I'd had her teachers. But of course, so many other people must have suffered then to keep the average down, so it was a bit selfish of her. Here's what we found. Students like community. They want to belong to something when they're at a university, and they don't like the transactional model. The transactional model is they turn up to get a certificate or a degree, they spend minimum time at university, and then they go home. This mic is very loud. Is it possible to turn the mic down a little bit? I think it's nearly going to feedback. Thank you. No, don't scroll down. Don't scroll down. No, don't scroll down. Yeah, thank you. We need a parallel curriculum. Professor Mushtaq Al-Atabi, who I'm sure many of you know, speaks about this. When he teaches his engineers, he teaches them not just engineering principles, but how to work together. And the famous story he told me, and he's probably told you, is when the team that he was training from Taylor's University that had gone out and won some car racing event worldwide, a competition one year. The next year they put in 2 teams. Have you heard me say this story before? I'm just repeating it straight from Mushtaq. They put in 2 teams, the experienced team and a junior team. And they flew them wherever it was in the world that they had to fly them to. And it's very hard, you know, to get cars in and out of Malaysia, so it was difficult to get the parts in and out. But they were all set up, racing somewhere. And he got a call one night from the senior team saying one of the pieces of the senior car's broken, and the senior car won't be able to race. And Mushtaq said, well, what are you thinking? And they said, well, we could take that part from the junior team's car. We've got a good chance of winning. I think we could win again this year, but we would need to cannibalize their car and they wouldn't be able to compete. And he said, well, I love him, he's great. He didn't say what to do, he just said, what do you guys think then? What are you thinking about this? And they thought long and hard, and then the team leader said, well, we've talked about it and we think we benefit a lot from being in the race last year, and maybe the winning's not important, and if we cannibalize the junior team's car, they wouldn't have that experience that we had of racing, so we think we wouldn't do it. And he said, good, and they didn't do it, and their car didn't race, and the other team didn't win. But you know what? I think that was a perfect learning experience, and that was the right outcome. And I told this to Richard Hopkins, who's quite famous, so I'm embarrassed I didn't know him because I'm not a Formula One person. But if anyone knows Formula One, we've got a new professor at UNSW, Professor of Practice, engineering practice, and he used to lead the Red Bull Formula One racing team. He worked at McLaren, he's like a racing guru. And he led them, did all the organisational stuff and team motivation and management, and he was the team leader. And they won 4 Formula One Grand Prix race championships 4 years in a row under his lead. He's now left and come to the uni. And I told him this story, but I didn't tell him the outcome. And he said, well, the right outcome is to let the other people race. And he said, With Formula One cars, they've made them as fast as they can be. They've done all the obvious things to make them fast. They've adjusted the fuel, they've adjusted the science, they've adjusted the mechanics. He said, you know, the weakest thing in a Formula One racing team now is the people. And his whole job is to make the people as good as possible. He said that's how we win, by having the best drivers, the best team. We just shave a second here and half a second here because our people are the best. And I sort of think that's what I believe we need to be teaching our students. When they come out, I want them to be the best people they can be, not just the best mechanics, but the best at being in a team, the best at cooperating, the best at collaborating. I sort of think that's what the world needs more of, just like that's what Formula One needs more of. So we need a parallel curriculum, not just a formal academic curriculum. We need to bring in a curriculum where people are taught teamwork, community spirit, collaboration, ethics, morality, values, a whole range of soft skills. We call them golden threads. The university actually needs to be serious about that and make that part of being a graduate. I found that loneliness was a huge problem for students. It caused students to drop out. One girl said she turned up to uni for a week and no one knew her name, and she thought, if I don't turn up tomorrow, no one will even notice if I'm not there. And then she said on the day that she decided to give up, she was walking to the bus and someone walking by just smiled at her. And she said, so I decided to stay. It turns out loneliness affects people's learning. Down on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, she couldn't concentrate, she wasn't thinking, she wasn't studying, not because we weren't explaining things well or we had, disorganized class or we weren't meeting learning objectives or whatever. She wasn't concentrating because her basic emotional needs weren't being met. I found that kindness has a huge impact. I find that our education system at the moment, at my university at least, tends to be a filtering process rather than an educating process. And the people that are left at the end, that graduate, they're the people that are just like the teachers. We've just filtered away the people that were different, and we just get a whole lot of average tomatoes coming out who are similar to the teachers' values. And in maths, that means we start with 10,000 students taking maths courses, and by the end we have, when they come to do honours, less than 100 people left doing maths. It's not that they're the only 100 good mathematicians, it's just they're the 100 that we've filtered out of all the rest. We've thrown away all the other people who are different. Also, I discovered that we had two huge assets that we weren't allowing for. Technology is great and money's great, but our biggest assets were our staff, who were really caring and prepared to do all sorts of extra things. But I put it in capital letters, the biggest asset of our university was our students. I think anyone that's taught online has learnt this too. Our students teaching other students is the best teaching. Our students helping other students is the best helping. Our students, when they help us design a course, it's a better course. I now put students on our promotion panels and on our interview panels. When we're interviewing for a new lecturer or position, we have a student on the panel. I have a student-led course and they redesign the whole course and all the assessments. It's much better than my course that they replaced. It's good to get students to do your artwork, to make your MOOCs, because they're fantastic. I'm a uni with 2,000, 3,000 staff and 60,000 students, but really I'm a uni with 63,000 staff, 63,000 teachers and 63,000 students. What we need to look after, I'm nearly done, what we need to look after are the transition period, it turned out, when people first come in. Students needed to have a sense of belonging, that they belong to a university, and students need to feel engaged. And this wasn't happening under our old transactional model, where students turned up for as little time as possible, did the bare minimum of work and then left. So here's what we're doing. And if we can just scroll up now far, this is the last bit. Oh, far, would it be all right to scroll up? So we made a documentary following the lives of the students. We tracked 6 and then now this year 9 students through their first year of university. We've got camera crews on them. They get GoPros that they take home and they do confession cam on it. We go into their classrooms, we just track their process and they record what it's like, because we wanted to know what the student experience was actually like. I have student spies who wear GoPros walking around on open day, experiencing life as a student. I'm trying to get my Vice Chancellor and the Deputy Vice Chancellors to be a student for a day, maybe even to swap roles with a student so they can be Vice Chancellor for a day. We get students to sit in with the IT people and help them on their projects. Our IT students are so good we couldn't afford to hire them once they graduate. Why not get them to help us with the projects? Not only does that make our projects good because they design things so they're sane from a student's point of view, but it means that our IT staff see students every day. Some of them have never seen a student. It's really easy to be unkind and thoughtless to people you never see. I take photos of students and I print them out on beautiful big pictures and I stick them around the university. In the Chancellery, where the Vice-Chancellor and everyone lives, I don't think a student's ever walked in there before, but I now have students walking there every day because I schedule meetings in there, and I put up pictures of students everywhere. Our Deputy Vice-Chancellor now has on his wall all sorts of happy pictures of students. It's really nice for him to see students. He said to me once, you know, if I had to name how many students I knew, it wouldn't be many. How many we teachers, we can name hundreds of students, but the people that lead the uni, they're so far removed, the poor things, they don't get to see the students anymore. It's easy to be unkind or cruel to students accidentally if you're never seeing them or thinking of them. We get the policymakers to meet the students. We're trying to schedule a common lunch hour so students can all have lunch together rather than having classes all day long, so there's a time for eating together. We're putting more seats around the campus so there's places for students to sit and talk together. We're organising students into group when they arrive at uni. There's small groups of mentors that look after each other and they'll stay together for the first year together and hopefully be friends for life. And then there's larger groups of students sharing common interests that work together, and that's vertical. So older students in the group mentor younger ones and help them through their problems. Just getting students to help students. We're looking at the welcome process to the university and the farewell. It's interesting. The uni says farewell to the students through a graduation ceremony. But the students don't really seem an important part of the graduation ceremony. And the students spend most of their lives in the faculties. But the faculties don't really ever properly say goodbye. I noticed with my daughters, when they left primary school, all the students, they make an arch with their hands up, and then the year sixes who are leaving run through the arch and everyone cheers them. So we're trying to do something like that at the faculty level, so the faculties have a proper farewell and cheering to the students who are leaving and thanking them for being part of it. We're doing things to build uni spirit. We've got a brilliant thank you thing where we wander around the uni once a week asking students if there's a teacher they'd like to thank. And the students write down which teacher and say why, and then I handwrite a postcard, a thank you card, and send it to the teacher. So now around the uni, teachers are starting to get cards saying, a student thanked you. They said, you were so kind, I nearly gave up and you encouraged me. Or a student thanked you and said, you inspire me. Or 3 students came up and thanked you and said, your classes are the reason they like coming to uni. And these are postcards, they're not postcards anymore, they're proper, nice, beautiful cards now, are going to people that probably will find promotion difficult because they're not obsessed with research, they're obsessed with teaching. People who perhaps get criticism all day and are in trouble and are under budgeted and overtired. I think these cards will mean a lot to them. We have a suggestion box where students come up every lunch and I give them free ice cream, and anyone that wants can come up and make any suggestion. And then we make all the suggestions public so anyone can see what anyone else is suggesting. And I work with the student body, and we have teams that then go to the different parts of the uni saying, oh, a whole lot of students are complaining about the toilets in this room. Someone should look into it. And someone says the library is too noisy in this area. And we can't always act on it, but we listen to everything they say, we make it public, and we try and act on it. We have something called the ugliest spot, where students walking around the campus enter a competition every month to take a photo of the ugliest spot on campus and send it in to us. And then they make suggestions for how to make it better. And we pick one a month, we give prizes to the students, and they come along and help us make it better. They design what will make it more awesome and beautiful. One boy was telling me there's this ugly spot he always hates. Now he's got the grounds people to put a fountain there and make it up. It hardly cost anything. He researched and found all the costs. And now it's a beautiful spot on campus. We've got something called That's Crazy, where students can just report crazy things the uni does. Like, oh, I need my ID card to enroll, but I can't get into the building that issues ID cards without an ID card. So they just suggest crazy things and we all laugh at them and then we fix them up. We sort of make it fun rather than that we don't care. We notice that students are getting stressed about catching buses because we're doing all this road work around the uni and all the trains and buses and everything's it's a nightmare transport around our uni at the moment. So we put like 1 billion buses on. There's buses running all the time, and this vast number of students is being scheduled in buses. But students were all saying, well, not all, but a large number, about 12%, were complaining about the buses. So then I got a student to take a GoPro and a timer, and she spent all day catching buses backwards and forwards. And then she took another day where she went to the end of the line, walked to the front of the line, clicked, and then went back to the end of the line, walked to the front. We worked out average I realized later on I could have just filmed the whole thing and we could have worked it on, made the student waste of time. But we worked out that on average, no one waits more than 5 minutes for a bus. So the students' complaints about buses, although everyone was saying they hated the waiting, it wasn't the amount of time. It turned out then, we did more interviews with students, it was just the unpleasantness of the waiting. Some people pushed in when the bus turned up and that stressed people. Other people didn't know when a bus was coming. So, you know, when you're waiting for something and you don't know when it's coming, it's really tense. So now we're going to put up signs saying how many minutes till the next bus. We put more security people on so that the queues will be controlled. It turns out we just had to manage their experience of waiting, which is quite cheap, rather than putting on more buses, which is more expensive. We just did that by listening to the students. And our last idea is we've got TripAdvisor for courses. We're building something like TripAdvisor for courses so the students can make comments and suggestions about all the courses. Quite frightening to the academics because you might think they'll criticise the courses, but then students start recommending courses to each other and praising each other, and we get it in real time. So if there's a problem with the course, we find out. And the lessons for e-learning in my remaining negative 1 minute. Can we just scroll up far, 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 far? Lessons for e-learning. When we make e-learning systems to make our students happy and engaged, to make them not be industrial, but to make them participate and reach their full potential, the lessons we've learned is our e-learning has to concentrate on ways of making students have a good time. They have to enjoy learning. It's so obvious, but we weren't doing it. We have to understand their motivations and work on their motivation. And I think there's a talk on that later on. We have to encourage diversity and flexibility among students. If we just teach students who are like us in ways that we like, we look after students who are like us, but actually not many students are like me. So we need to actually look after everyone, and that's something we weren't doing. Because we academics, we're all quite similar, but our students aren't always like us. Everything needs to be student-led as much as possible. Whenever students have an input into something, they just make it so much better. And then they have ownership and they feel part of it. So I love that in the online MOOCs when the students take over and start helping each other and supporting each other and even helping suggest activities to write. I think that's the way to go with MOOCs. We shouldn't have a one-way transmission of data. That just sends everyone to sleep. Please don't do that. Although we've got the internet now, please don't use the internet to transmit things to people. Everything needs to be two-way. If anyone shows me a design for a course or an assessment and it's just a cleverer way of transmitting things to people, I don't think it's the right solution. There should also be a way of coming back where the students can contribute back, can share, can collaborate, there needs to be a channel coming back. They can't be sitting there passively like you are now. They'll fall asleep, maybe like you are now. They need to actually be involved in the process. And the last thing is gamification. It's a great idea. We've been experimenting with it for more than a decade now, but it's becoming a fad. Can I just issue a note of warning about gamification? There's two ways of doing it. One is you use it to trick people into doing things. It's just another motivator. And the things they're doing aren't particularly meaningful. That's just another way, industrial process where you found the cows will come to the stockyard quicker if you have more attractive smelling stuff, drawing them in. The other way of doing gamification is so it actually is part of the learning. So that we had a great example over here if everyone wants to see it. This wonderful lady here has designed an NP junction analogy for students trying to learn about transistors, which is based on a traditional game that she plays, which in Australia we have a variant called drafts. Make the game relevant to what's going on. Don't make it like adding sugar to something so people will eat it. Make the thing you're cooking more delicious so people will eat it. That's my only notice about gamification. Whew. Thank you very much, everyone. Done. Does anyone have a question while they're walking up? No questions at all? No? I'm looking at you. All right. I'm just waiting. I'm done. Oh, any questions? Oh, I'm allowed to ask for questions. Oh, phew. I was worried because I was a minute or two over that they wouldn't let me have questions. Does anyone want to ask anything? Or yes?
If you have you will have a bigger brain when you have a bigger community. May I know further about that? You did mention this now, that our brain gets bigger because we have more community. Yeah. Please explain.
Can I explain? Yeah. This is a great question, and maybe I might have said it wrongly. Different species have different community sizes, like different sorts of great apes and things like that. And in the past, that's been the case too, with various forms of humans, essentially, that have become extinct. It's not that an individual person's brain gets physically bigger as they have a bigger community. I'm sure. Oh, the beast. Oh, so I only know this for... So the person that did this work is a famous guy from Oxford called Robin Dunbar. He did it maybe about 40 years ago. The number for humans is supposed to be 150. It's called Dunbar's number. So a lot of people try and never have groups bigger than 150 because that's as big as obviously Malaysians can have bigger groups because you have so many excellent friends on Facebook. But yeah, it turns out that I'm not sure about other animals. I only know about the great apes. I should know about other animals. I'll try and find out. But Robin Dunbar is the man. He's brilliant, and he's written many good books and papers about it, actually. He's quite famous. There's another sort of popular book out at the moment called Sapiens, which you could listen to, but it's not as good as Robin Dunbar. Yes?
In Malaysia, we believe that we are not from ape. We are from the Adam. We are human. We are different category. So, just to...
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Oh, you keep... so I hope I wasn't being offensive. Yeah. You believe, okay. Okay. But even if we haven't, yes, I guess I don't know what we've come from, but I know what we are similar to. So it's interesting that to get more data points, we can look at animals that are more similar to us, and we can find they have the same characteristic. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't been offended. A human. Yes. Yes. And I imagine it works across animals because it takes a lot of. There's this thing called. I think it's called theory of mind, which is. I know what I'm thinking. That's first order theory of mind. But if I know what you're thinking, that's second order. So if I can imagine what you're thinking. Now they've done experiments on many animals, not just apes, but many animals, and only a few species of animals can do second order, which is know what someone else is thinking. And I think our children learn it by the age of 2. You can see when people do it. And then third order is, I know what you're thinking about what you're thinking. That's third order. Now, and then fourth order is so on and so on. And it's much harder for the brain to do each extra level of thinking. And to work in a society, we figure we need 4 orders. All humans can do 4 orders. 80% of humans can do 5 orders. So, and we need just a really big brain to do that. Most of our brain is spent just thinking about people and community. Yeah. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Then can I ask a question to you guys? How many of you do you think are graduating students who are not just discipline experts, but who have changed as people? How many of you are trying to change them as people? Is anyone? Trying to make them better citizens? Trying to make them better team members? Are you all too shy, or is no one doing it? Surely you're too shy. I've said it. Yes. The question. Well, repeat the question. The question was, how many of you are training your students not just to learn facts, but to be different people? You're training them to be better at communicating, better at working in teams, better at solving problems, better at doing analysis. Are you all doing that?
If I'm wrong, just bear with me, okay? The Malaysians, the teachers, especially, we are supposed to produce excellent students in terms of A's. So you will be a good teacher if you have more students with more A's. So that is a challenge.
Yes. So, and I think that is a challenge worldwide. We all have to do that. That's the bottom level of the needs. We need to turn out students with A's. But I guess what I've been suggesting today, and I don't know if you agree or not, is there should be more than just A's. We should be caring more than just their A's. We should be caring that how they think, how they act, how they help the world. You said it, yeah. bring out the human in them, help them to be the best humans they can be. You can get A's studying at home, alone, looking at a video and doing a quiz. And yeah, but the bridge will still collapse if that's how you're learning. To build a bridge that doesn't collapse, you actually need to change how you think. And I don't think you can do that watching a video and answering a quiz. I think that involves engaging your emotions, your feelings, talking with others, experiencing things. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for all your questions. Without your questions, I wouldn't have had any questions. I'll have to give you something later on. Thank you, everyone. It's so nice to meet you all and see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Richard Buckland, for the very interesting and helpful talk. We surely have gained a lot from this sharing session. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Shukri Nordin to present Professor Richard Buckland with a token of appreciation.
Can you do the SelfActualization for me? No.
With that, thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon. We have a little bit announcement for IDEL category. So attention to all IDEL judges, kindly excuse yourself to seminar room right now for a short briefing by the head judge. So again, for all IDEL judges, kindly excuse yourself to seminar room right now for a short briefing by the head judge. Thank you.
Dia nak pakai ni ke? Mouse paper ni.
Okay. Scared? Our next featured speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Alyani Ismail from University Putra Malaysia, UPM. With more than 23 years of experience, she specializes in wireless communication engineering and also digital education. With that, I invite Associate Professor Dr. Alyani Ismail to give her speech on artificial intelligence and the rise or the fall of real intelligence. Welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and hello everyone. Sound check number 1. IUCEL 2018, how are you? Shout please, how are you? Good? Thank you, Miss Chairperson. It's good to be here. Nice to know all of you. Some familiar faces I've met before, and many more to get acquainted, and maybe Facebook friends. Right. Perhaps you have heard about my topic, artificial intelligence, AI. Artificial intelligence, AI. Or Alyani Ismail, AI. I asked my kids a few days ago, what do they understand by AI? You know what's the first thing they said? Oppo camera, AI, capability. So, you know, people have heard about the term, have learned about AI. But do you really understand what AI means? or you just understand the application of AI? Yes. So camera phone with AI capability, what do? They transform you from being human to being robots? No. To being angel from heaven. Because you can put any makeup, artificial makeup using AI capability. So my talk today is quite straightforward. The question asked by many people, the rise or the fall of real intelligence. Whenever we speak about artificial intelligence, the question keep popping up. What about real intelligence, especially from the educator's point of view? Do you really want artificial intelligence or real intelligence? Let's have a look. Human intervention. When your clickers doesn't work. Okay. Alyani Ismail at a glance, AI at a glance, my academic background, just to give you a glance, a flavor of having a speaker talking to you about artificial intelligence and intelligence in general. So I have a degree in engineering, particularly electronics and information engineering. When I first learned about artificial intelligence in a course, we were asked to develop a program, an algorithm on how to select a dating partner. 25 years ago, so you can calculate how many, what's my age then. And from then on, my specialization went further into communication engineering. It's machine-to-machine communication. I'm good in human-to-human communication as well, but, you know, robots perhaps more interesting to study. And also digital education. I've been in e-learning for quite some time. I was the former Meta chair. So we have a mix of background. I can speak about psychology if I want to. I can speak about engineering if I want to. I can speak about education if I want to. But today, we'll talk about engineering just a little bit. Intelligence. What does intelligence mean? Very simple. Very simple, even though it's complex. Learn from past experience. If you can learn from past experience, that means you have intelligence. People who don't learn from past experience, not intelligent? You tell me. And also adaptation to new situations. Adaptation to new situations. Can apes do that? Right? Can apes do that? Why not? They are adapting as well. Handling of abstract ideas. Human intelligence should be capable of handling abstract ideas, not a prescribed ideas. Ability to change own environment using the gained knowledge. This is human intelligence. I put up 4 pictures there for you to imagine, from apes to man intelligence to women intelligence to robot intelligence. What makes us different? People say, well, men say women are complex. Is it true? Ladies, all ladies here. Ladies, people say women are complex. being. Of course. Of course, right? We are not denying it. We have a bunch of clothes to wear in our wardrobe and we can't decide which one to wear. That's better. The worst part is, we said, right in front of the wardrobe, we don't have anything to wear. That's intelligence. You learn from past experience. You're trying to adapt to abstract situations. Now, the human brain is immensely complex. As you know, what's between our ears is a universe of its own. I have heard scientists, neuroscientists, saying that it's easier to learn about the universe than to learn about how brain works. It's that complex. It's a universe. Talking about that, so next, it doesn't work. Okay. We are now living in the world that is even more complex because we collect data. So we have a more complex world with more data. Previously, we were living in the past whereby data is not that important. But since collections of data and tons and tons and tons of data, it makes our life even more complex. Because humans have limitation. There are reasons why humans have limitations. Because have you heard about a saying of something like, things you don't know won't hurt you? You have heard about it? Things you don't know won't hurt you. But because of masses of data nowadays, things that we know will hurt us, perhaps. Because most of the times we say that humans have limitation in analyzing data, or even collecting data, or even remembering things. There are reasons to that. God made you forgetful because you need to dream, you need to move on. But with these masses of data, even Facebook reminds you of your history. So it's about how you handle the history. It's how you handle the feeling nowadays is much more important. But where does that leave us? Artificial intelligence is on the rise. By this year, we have seen many inventions based on artificial intelligence alone. And by 2025, what else? I'm going to show you just a little bit a flavor on future readings. I found some innovation that will blow your mind. And it will help me answer the question whether or not the intelligence of humankind has increased or fallen. With the rise of artificial intelligence, AI, it shows that, it manifests that our intelligence have increased, right? We can invent things, we can do discoveries, we can do many things. Human can do that. So would you answer that the human intelligence have dropped with AI? Human intelligence rise with AI because for artificial intelligence to take place, you need to understand first about the brain, how human brain works. For the past 15 years, our understanding of human brain exploded. We have reached to the stage that we can now understand how human brain works. For us to do artificial intelligence, for us to make robots mimics human. So you have to understand human in order to make sure your robots mimics human. Intelligent. But what does this say? This is a new article published by Science Alert, also published in by CNN, saying that our IQ scores are falling in worrying reversal of 21st century intelligence boom. Our IQ scores dropped for the past 2 decades. What does it say? Is the rise of the fall of human intelligence. For those who are not believers of e-learning would say, I told you, e-learning is not good. It makes our IQ go slower. This bunch of people will say that because there's a thinking that we should be opposing to technology because we are making ourselves goes down the hill with the technology. Some people think like that. Don't use e-learning. E-learning will make students addicted to mobile phones. How would you answer that? E-learning has, technology has made IQ fall. The way I see this, why it happens, is not because the human has gone down the hill in terms of intelligence, but the way we measure human intelligence, human ability has to change for the past 20 years. It has to change. Albert Einstein once said, everyone is genius. Everyone, every one of us. But if you tell a fish that its ability is to climb a tree, then the fish will think that it's stupid. Are we measuring intelligence because people answer written examinations for IQ tests? Are we measuring the right intelligence? Is it valid nowadays saying that IQ has dropped? So perhaps the thing on the other side, we might want to think that, we might want to ask ourselves as educators, are we using the right measurement? Even the statistics say that the IQ has dropped, I still believe people are intelligent in their own way, and we have yet to discover it. It's not because of e-learning, it's just a tool. A glance of looking into the future. Well, this is not future. This is right here. Emotion measurement, number one. Technology. What AI can do, it can measure emotion. If I look at your faces now, I can't really tell your emotion. If you are smiling, thank you, madam, you're smiling from ear to ear, I know that you enjoy my talk, or you are communicating with me. But if I see some faces that shows no emotion whatsoever, I can't tell. I definitely can't tell. If somebody says, I love you to you face to face, would you recognize the emotion? Right, this is from Real Eyes. A company developed emotion reading, emotion measurement. It can measure from your facial expressions, and from day by day it got more complicated and it got more sophisticated. It can even tell you up to 78% or even 80% correct measurement of emotion. So what do you do with it? what if that technology can be used to know how your students really feel? You put up a camera in your class, and intelligence system will tell you definitely 80% accuracy of how your students feel, listening to you talking. Would you do that? How much is it? So, if you know how your students really feel, our intelligence will say we should react to a certain point. That's what people fear most. They don't fear technology, even though they say they fear the technology will change our social structure and so on. But it's not the technology that they fear. They fear the truth and the knowledge that the technology will give you. That's human. But to put it to good use, this is good for marketing. For example, if you see an advertisement and you react to it, so the company may know whether the advert sells or not. So this is good thing. But it's not good for lecturer. Until you change the way you deliver your course. Right. Number 2, a sneak peek into the future. Not the future, it exists now. There are several universities in Sweden and also MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology have studied cyborg. But this time, not human yet. This time, it's a flower. It seems like a normal flower, but that particular plant has the ability to transfer electricity. Being a plant, its capability to produce electricity perhaps more because they have photosynthesis. They use solar power. So this is what the current study on cyborg, plant cyborg, is all about. Are you scared if you can't tell which is the artificial plant or which one is the real plant? But it's happening. Number 3, I presented this concept, this idea of people developing digital immortality in Bangkok last 2 months. It's scary for some people, but it's even scarier now that it is happening. Not just, you don't need to wait to 2050, but people living online. I presented at the conference on how people live online. How have we been living our life online? And this is one of the things that comes into the picture. By 2050, a futurist, Dr. Ian Pearson, has predicted that we will be living inside an Android shell. When we do, human consciousness will be uploaded to online servers, and we will be able to use any Android body to inhabit the real world. That means I may need a USB cable to transfer what's in my mind to another being or to a robot. What's on your mind? This concept is called mind uploading. It has started 30 years ago. The research has started. So Do you remember the term what's on your mind? Where did you see these terms, this question? What's on your mind? Where? Facebook. Facebook asks you each day, 40 times a day, 40 times a day, it asks you when you open up your apps, what's on your mind? You have seen it before, right? But maybe you didn't realize because it has become a norm to you. Live forever. Okay, that's what we are doing. We upload our mind to Facebook, to social media, to Instagram. So you don't really need 2050 to upload your mind because you have been doing that. All Mark Zuckerberg has to do is to collect the data and use it with your consent. Well, that's exactly what we are doing in social media anyway, right? We upload our mind, realizing or not. This is a roadmap to human physical immortality roadmap. I don't know who did this, but it's available everywhere. That artificial intelligence, we may have come to the stage whereby the technology will enable us to transfer our knowledge, or our feelings, our consciousness to another being, or to another shell of body. Right? Roadmap. Moving there. So all in all, technology shapes our brain. Professor Richard Buckland has mentioned that our brain has a certain size depending on our needs. But some recent research has shown that our brains are sinking in terms of size. Perhaps we have transferred our communication needs to something else, so we don't need to have a big brain. So our attention span, your learner's attention span, your student's attention span has becoming very small. And we pay attention for 30 seconds. Trust me, 30 seconds when I said, sound check, number 1, how are you? And you got me there and then you just forgot about me. That's how it is, 30 seconds. And we are having a smaller time span, attention span day by day. So how do you deal with this? Naturally, most technology and innovation has good intention. I still remember when this is a little bit of a personal story, when my father used to say to me, when I was beginning to select what career that I want to pursue, my father said this, Alyani, if you are an engineer, you alone an engineer. But if you are a lecturer, 100 people will become an engineer. At that moment, I had this realization, self-actualization, motivation, up until now, that this is my place. This is what I want to do. I want to create 100 more engineers like me. I can be an engineer, but I want to create 100 more like that. So the place is at the university. And I read about what defines an engineer. At the end of the sentence, it said, it's for the best of mankind. You build something from physics, from science, but at the end of the day, every career is about mankind. So we started off being an engineer with good intention. We started off technologies with good intention, but what we ended up with, some good, some bad. This is human, being human. Take a look at this. This is what happens in 1916 versus 2016 or even 2018. Humans, technology shaped us the way we want to be shaped. Don't blame the technology. Don't blame e-learning. Don't blame the e-learning coordinators. It's human being human. It does not matter. You have a newspaper or you have a mobile phone. Human being human. So it's a challenge to all of us when a newspaper becomes more than a newspaper. Our role has perhaps changed the way that IQ tests, statistics has changed for the past 20 years. Our role has to be making the learners to feel hungry. Because I know you feel hungry now because it's lunchtime. The learners need to feel hungry for what? For more knowledge, for advancement, advanced community, advanced self, advanced, what else? If they don't feel hungry, they come to your class and say, I'm full. I don't want anymore. I'm full. So how are you going to make your students hungry? You need to learn about that. If you are educators, as I mentioned, I can talk about psychology if I want to, even though my field is engineering. Because nowadays, knowledge is not specialized or only specific to a certain field. It's multidisciplinary. I am an educator, so I have to know how brain works, psychology. I'm an educator and I have to know how to design learning. I go to education. So don't be afraid to learn more because you need to be hungry too. Hungry for knowledge because what you have learned in your PhDs or school years or college years are in your own discipline. But be hungry for other discipline as well, so that you will be able to develop a human being from nothing to something. And learners need to dream. Robots cannot dream yet. Robots cannot do the dream part. It's human doing the dream part. You're telling about the future. People are telling about the future. That's a dream. And the human capability, what defines us, what makes us different from robots is that we pursue dreams. Robots has algorithms embedded into it to follow from past experience and do learning, machine learning, and decides what's next. But we have the ability to dream with or without past experience. That's what you want the students to do, to dream. And when they have dreams, they will feel hungry. Hungry for more. That's when the lifelong learning comes in. They are hungry for more. So they don't wait for you to give you that knowledge. They will find it. That's lifelong learning. And discovery starts with simple ideas. We have seen Newton, we have seen Galileo. They all started with simple ideas. Don't make it complicated just yet. Let them find out the complicated part themselves, discovery. And perhaps educators need to be a bit more interesting nowadays because you have handphones, you have this, you have that. They are more interesting. So you can't blame technology because we tend to be not interesting. We have to be more interesting. So self-development. So what's more interesting? I've done a Google Trend search. This is Google Trend. You can do this at home. I mean, after this, when you want to find out something, people search for what? Artificial intelligence in Malaysia versus human intelligence. The red one is human intelligence. The blue ones are artificial intelligence. People search more about artificial intelligence than human intelligence. You can see the difference in Malaysia alone. In Malaysia, for the past 12 months, artificial intelligence has gone, has got its place to be very interesting than human intelligence. This is one way to show that you can use Google Trends in your class. So let's see, another battle. Who's more interesting, Sophia the robot or Alyani the human? Alyani the human, yes. But what does Google say about this? Let's see. Nobody searched for me for the past 12 months. What I want you to do now is to search my name, Alyani Ismail, so that the statistic goes up. So Sophia the robot has actually got more and more interesting. Oh yes, I have to be popular then. How to be popular? Perhaps I will ask my students to search for me, starting with you. So when I go back, I hope to see the statistic go up today. Because you can see the dates, the dates there, the dates. This is for the past 12 months in Malaysia. Fluctuates, you see the fluctuations, that means event triggered. When there's something happens, when there's an announcement, for example, Sophia the robot was born, or Sophia the robot appears in TV shows, Sophia the robot has been given citizenship by Saudi Arabia in 2017, so it goes up. So people search. The same thing you do when Fasha Sanda and, not Fasha Sanda, Fazura and Fatah Amin, the same way, you can see the trends. They are the artists, so. Now, Sophia is more interesting than Alyani. It shows. Shows, right? So what else? If I want to make sure that Sophia has a contender, I have to find somebody that look like me. Somebody that look like me. We share the same rabbit tooth shape. So between Sophia the robot and Kristen Stewart the vampire, who do you think more interesting? For the past 12 months in Malaysia, this is the result. Watch this. Oh. Sophia the robot in blue and Kristen Stewart in red. Yeah, I found somebody who can beat Sophia the robot. See, Malaysians love the vampire more than the robot. Okay? Hantu kat 5. I will do the search, or you can do the search. We will compare between Alyani the human and Hantu kat 5 the ghost. Okay? Now, I travel a lot, talking about e-learning for the past 6 years. One of the things that people ask quite often is, should I deliver lecture or not? Should I deliver lecture or not? That is the biggest question that people ask, where to start doing e-learning. Some people will jump, to learning design. You don't have to deliver lectures and so on. But some people, majority of educators would think that lectures is the amanah, is the thing that you have to do, no matter what. I said, okay, fine, let's do lectures even though it's boring. People say it's boring. People say it's boring. But I said, it's okay to be boring. We were born crying, not laughing. It's okay to be boring for a start. Okay? But be considerate. Give people their own sweet time and place to enjoy your boringness. Give them remote control. Give your learners remote control. Give your students remote control so that they can pause you. They can rewind you. They can fast forward you. They can even stop you. Boring stop. You know, when I was involved in MOOCs development at my own university, the first thing that we did is record lectures because that's the only thing lecturers know how to do. And that's a good thing. People say it's boring, but that's a good thing for me because I can see that people develop from looking at their own videos. Try this. Go back, do self-video, self-V, not selfie, self-V. Self-video and see when you speak in front of your students, this is you speaking. So you might want to change the way you teach, but let's start with this and upload it in your learning management system and see how it goes. See, with now learning analytics, you will know how many people has pushed the stop button. Okay? Oh, dia menguap dah, ngantuk tu. If AI and RI, real intelligence on the rise, what's falling? What's falling? If both of them rise, what's falling? Humanity, ethics. But humanity and ethics have gone down even before AI was born. People went to war, human went to war before AI was born. People questions ethics even before AI was born. So, are you afraid of AI or are you afraid of RI? Real intelligence, the human intelligence? What are you afraid of? What are we afraid of? We said we are afraid of technology that will change our life. But it's not about the technology. I've shown you the picture. It's about the human part. The human themselves. Even though we have been shaped by technology, but technology wouldn't shape us if we allow it to happen. We have transferred our identity to Sophia. We have granted the permission to Sophia to be human, to mimic human. We have granted people to lose their own identity. You can't tell which one is the right woman or is not women. It's a sensitive issue in Malaysia, right? So let's avoid that. That's human part. Human needs identity. If you have blur line between artificial intelligence and real intelligence, that's when chaos happens. You can't tell which one is the right identity. But you granted that permission with or without AI. So what do you need to do to your students at the end of the day? This is what I always say. When they learn to be human, they will learn that they are not God. Don't play God. When they need to learn to be human, human has limitations for reasons, but humans has dreams that they can follow through to make sure that happens. But in pursuing that dream, don't even think that you are close enough to be a God. I am an engineer. I am I am an educator. In engineering, I have no fear to say about religion. I have no fear to say what's right for humankind because I know when my father said, Alyani, if you are a lecturer, you can produce 100. If 100 more engineers, not you alone. It's about other people. It's about humankind. So I'm calling all STEM people, STEM educators, don't be afraid to talk about humanity in your class. Thank you very much. All the best to you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We have QA session? Oh, okay. Still time. I know you're hungry for knowledge. One question.
I would like to know whether there are any suggestion bringing Sophia to Malaysia. Sophia, so that can we watch Sophia how human she is.
The question is a good suggestion of bringing Sophia, the robot. We have many Sophias around in Malaysia already. We have Sophia Jane, Sophia. You want Sophia the robot to be in Malaysia? We can arrange that. I would say that people are fascinated with new things. Okay. What is the same thing that you don't have to bring Sophia here, you just need your mobile phone. When it is interesting enough, that's what intrigues us to find out more. So that's one of the points that I mentioned. Perhaps we have to be more interesting. But it's a good idea to bring Sophia. I would love to meet her and I would love to interview her. I would love to ask, who's more interesting, you or me? Sure. Okay, any more?
Hi, thank you, that was lovely. I wonder if there are any plans to bring Kristen Stewart here to Malaysia. Kristen Stewart the vampire.
Oh, bringing Kristen Stewart. I will be the first one to be, I won't ask the question whether or not it's me or her because I didn't show it. Kristen, Professor Buckland was saying that maybe we can bring Kristen Stewart here. Yeah? Yeah, I would be more excited than meeting Sophia. I'm more interested in human more than machines, even though I'm in engineering. I don't know. Anymore? Oh.
But a serious question, do you think there really is a chance we'll be uploaded? Or that seems so far away still?
If you read the articles published on mind uploading, geneticists are working together with neuroscientists to develop a protein that can store the memory and transfer that protein to another being. We have in us a protein that has been able to do that. But transferring that protein is one hurdle, one challenge that they have to face. What more transferring? I think perhaps it's even easier to transfer from human to machines rather than human to human because we are two complex beings. So from a complex being to much simpler form, perhaps they have done that in a way that they need to use chemical reactions to happen because humans store memories, emotions, knowledge somewhere. So that somewhere they have found it. But to transfer it, that's the challenge. I believe it's still a long way, but the future is said that it's 2050. But don't worry, when Michael J. Fox predicted Back to the Future, they predicted we will not be walking, we'll be on anti-gravity shoes. It did not happen, right? So hopefully we are still far away from that. Not in our lifetime, maybe. So any more? So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alyani Ismail, for the very futuristic and fruitful talk. We surely have gained a lot from this sharing session. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Sabri to present Dr. Alyani Ismail with a token of appreciation. With that, thank you.